We're the Benson Gatelys family. We're parents to two beautiful boys. Noah is 6, who's into superheroes and Spider-Man and all things action-packed. He's a funny little chap, quite independent. And his brother Rowan is 4. He's crazy about farming and all things to do with that. He's very funny, very witty, and very lovable. In January 2020 of this year, the 21st, they were diagnosed with Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy. And this is our story. I'm Bianca. I'm from Athlone originally. I've been living here in Ballyforan and Dysart for the past 7 years. I've worked in Athlone for many years until COVID. I was working full-time as a hairstylist in town, and I am now carer to the 2 boys, so I have given up my career to look after the boys. And this is Sean.
Yes, I'm Sean Gatelys from Dysart, County Roscommon. Currently working in O'Mara's garage in Athlone, and I also do part-time farming. And Rowan especially loves the farming. Once you come home in the evening, the minute you're in the door, we go to the farm.
And no dinner.
And you can't have time to eat the dinner, you just go. And it's only small things he wants to do. He's like, look at the tractor, sit on the tractor, look at the quad or a trailer. He really enjoys it, and I really enjoy bringing him. Where Noah doesn't like to go at the farming, but there's certain things that he wants to do and see, so we have to do that, and we're happy to do it.
Yeah, Noah's more into action figures and Spider-Man and Batman and movies, and he can rhyme off whole movies nearly at this point, and bedtime stories are tell me a story about Spider-Man, and if you haven't seen the movie, you're in big trouble because you can't get it wrong. You've got to go by the script of the movie for his bedtime story, and he'll correct you on it.
Very good. Would it be fair to say that at this stage the 2 boys are full of the joys of life, like other boys of similar age?
They are, yeah, they are very much so. They mix well, they love school, they love their pals, they love their cousins. They spend quite a lot of time with their cousins, which is great. Gives us a little bit of a breather. And they would actually quite happily live elsewhere. Yesterday I was told we're going to go and live with Auntie Neaty, and we'll come and visit you, Mammy, which was nice.
Very good. Unfortunately, earlier this year, the 2 boys were diagnosed with Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy, or DMD. I know there's plenty of people out there that don't really know or understand what DMD is. Can you explain that for us?
It is quite hard to understand what it is, and sometimes it can be quite hard to explain what it is. I suppose I have done quite a bit of reading. It's very consuming reading. It's very hard reading. It's basically a muscle wasting disease. So it affects every muscle in the body. It starts in the legs. What it does is the muscle, as it breaks down, isn't able to repair itself because of a lack of protein that's needed for the repair muscles. So when the muscle breaks down, it's replaced really with fatty tissue, so it becomes quite useless. This affects all the muscles in the body. As I said, it starts in the legs, but it works its way through the entire body, up into the arms, and then into the organs, which are also muscles in themselves. Finally, I suppose, taking over the heart muscles.
Okay. It has to be tough to watch that, I suppose, the deterioration, over time with the muscles.
It will be.
Are there any ways around the deterioration, or is there ways of helping the boys to cope with that?
Helping the boys is down to medication. So at the moment they're on steroids. Unfortunately, it's not the steroid we'd hoped they'd be on. There were some new steroids brought onto the market and they just don't suit. different types of Duchenne, not different types of Duchenne, but their Duchenne and what's missing and what's not there and what is there within them, this steroid didn't suit. It just wasn't going to work for them. It would have been a steroid that would have had none of the bad side effects that a steroid can have. And unfortunately, that wasn't going to be used on them. And any of the trials that are ongoing are also not suitable, which was really hard to hear.
Okay. Let's go back in time for a second, and we'll go back to prior to January 2020, before the boy's diagnosis. Were there any signs or any little things that you had picked up on that you may have said something isn't just fully right, or my boys are not the same as other boys of a similar age, or had you noticed anything at all?
We did kind of think they were...
Yeah, there was little things all along when they were younger. Even the standing up, getting to the standing up position, all like that. The tractors, the small little tractors, they wouldn't pedal them, and you could say put your feet on the pedals, pedal them. They just weren't interested in it because they can't do it to their ability. So
they knew they couldn't
do it,
yeah.
so they didn't do it. The little bicycles, they would walk by them and play with some other toy, and I was quite happy that they would play with another toy, that they don't want to cycle the bike.
It's almost like they knew their limits.
Yeah.
You know, they'd never really try anything that I suppose deep down they knew they couldn't do. You know, climbing stairs. They were never jumpers, they were never climbers. Everything was always on the ground, on the floor.
But even then you'd see other kids of the same age, and you'd say, well, mine can't do that.
But they don't. We didn't think it was a case of they can't, but we kind of thought they just don't.
And they will do it later.
Yeah.
Children develop at different ages, so we didn't think anything really of it. At one stage I thought maybe he's afraid of heights, because in the playgrounds you'd put him up the steps to go down the slide. No, this is yes. And he'd say, it's too high, take me down. So then we thought maybe he's afraid of heights. And
that turned out to be a balance thing, which is connected. You know.
Okay. I suppose with the benefit of hindsight, or sometimes hindsight may be causing you to look back and say, looking back, that is why the boys weren't progressing. And at the time, I suppose you could have been saying, like you said there yourself there, Sean, all children progress at different times and ages, and it was very easy to make those assumptions.
Yeah.
So do you find hindsight hard looking back and realising, okay, the reason that he was afraid of heights, or the reason they didn't go to the bikes, was more than likely to do with Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy?
Yeah, you feel guilty. You feel guilty that you didn't see it for yourself. You wonder, did you subconsciously ignore it? You question yourself as a parent. Did you do enough? Did you not do enough?
Okay.
You know?
But then sometimes even when you're looking at them and they're not doing certain things, you feel bad and you think, oh, he can't do this or he can't do that. But that's me thinking that, where he has never done this, so he's doing things that he wants to do, and they will do stuff that I never did. Okay, I might want them to say play hurling, play football, all things that I did growing up, but they will do different things that I never did, or I wasn't any good at, and they might be brilliant at them.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move forward then to January 2020, this year. How did the diagnosis come about? What steps were taken to actually get to that decision? What was noticed in the months prior to that? Why did all of a sudden you decide maybe it's not the progression of the boys at a different age? Maybe it is something different. Talk us through how that came about, and talk us through the day of the diagnosis, because from the outside looking in, that day had to have been devastating for you guys.
It was. So I suppose Noah, when he started school September 12 months ago, the teacher had asked me was there a problem with Noah's legs? And I thought, no, he's just not as agile as the other kids. He's not into the rough and tumble. And then there were developmental checks that all children have in junior infants. So he kind of failed miserably on those. So they decided to refer us to the primary care in Roscommon to see a physiotherapist. So we brought the boys to that appointment in December, and they had a look at him and checked out the legs and the feet and the muscles and got them to stand up and sit down and do different bits and pieces with them. And actually with only Noah at the time, because he was referred through school. And I happened to have Rowan there with me. And I said, you're going to see this guy fairly shortly. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, because he would be less able-bodied than Noah. So she said, we'll check him out now, instead of having you to come back, which was fantastic of her to do that. So that's what they did. And she said, we might just refer you to peds in Ballyforan. That'd be paediatric doctor for children. So the referral was made, and I was working that morning. So Sean said, I'll take the morning off and I'll bring them down. So he went down and he met a lovely man, Dr. Rafat, who basically ran the same examination on the legs and getting them to stand up and sit down and different things like that. And Sean rang me then in the afternoon.
I can actually remember that day with the doctor, because he said, we'll just play a game here, and he says if the two of them gets on the ground, and we'll see who can get up the fastest. And I knew myself that this wasn't going to be a quick reaction from them to get up. But as it turns out, there was a sink in the room beside Noah, so he reached for the sink to pull himself up, and Rowan was on the ground and he came towards me.
Which he always did.
For me to pull him up.
Yeah.
So, the doctor knew straight away these two lads weren't able to get off the ground by themselves, know. And then he arranged for the next day for
an X-ray
on the hips and blood tests.
Yeah.
So
the X-ray for the hips came back clear.
Yeah, and both of us were there the next day.
Yeah.
And hip X-ray back clear, and he told us that the bloods would be back later that evening. And that if the readings were high, possibly treatment, and if they were lower, there would be physio things. And that
the blood test was for an enzyme called CK, which it shows up in the blood if there's muscle damage. So basically he was looking to see what the extent of muscle damage was in the body.
Okay.
So he rang that evening.
He rang that evening at about 6 o'clock, and he said yes, the results were back, and that the levels in the boys' blood were up on the 20,000s.
A normal read is about 190.
Yeah. So he had said, we'll have to get to Dublin with the boys. And I said, the exact words were, we'll get to Dublin and we'll get it sorted. And he says, well, Mr. Gatelys, it mightn't be just as easy as that. I had known nothing about that much about DMD beforehand. But of course then, you look into it deeper and deeper and deeper, and you understand then.
And you drive yourself delirious.
That process.
He hadn't really mentioned that at that point.
No, he didn't mention DMD. He just told us.
Somebody mentioned to us
Yeah.
that it could be this.
Yeah.
And I just said, no, it's not. It's not. I said, we go to Dublin, we talk to a specialist, and he tells us what it is. And until that point, we keep an open mind and we try and stay positive. So we went to Dublin on the 21st of January. And initially I thought we were just going to meet this man. Is Dr. Declan O'Rourke. So he met with us, brought us in, did physical examination on the boys, and had the blood results to hand because he had been in correspondence with Dr. Rafat in Ballyforan. So he did his examinations, and then he asked for a staff member to come and bring the boys out to play. So they have a nice little play area in Temple Street Hospital. It's a lovely hospital. It's a really good children's hospital. So he sat us down and he started to explain about Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy and what it did and why they had it. And on that moment, that's when things crumbled. We weren't imagining we were going for a diagnosis that day. I thought it was a first meeting.
Yeah,
Just to
consultation
meet
with
this
him, yeah.
man, a consultation, and then do further tests, or a biopsy had been mentioned. But this man has worked all over the world. He was in America for a long time. He's done a lot of research into all the dystrophies and worked very closely, with trials and medications and steroids and everything. So he knows his stuff. He didn't need to do anything further. The blood results and the boy's capabilities were enough for him to tell us that yes, this what it is. So he wanted us to have some bloods taken that day. So myself and the two boys had bloods taken. And the reason they take it from the mother is because the gene that the boys get from the mother is where the fault lies. Sometimes it can happen spontaneously also within a child, but it can happen spontaneously in the mother. So the gene that I give them carries what they need to produce this protein for muscle regeneration. So it turns out that I am a carrier, and until that time, or until we got the blood results back from London, from genetics in London, I didn't know I was a carrier. So me being a carrier meant that any son I would have a 50-50 chance of having Duchenne, and any daughter I might have would have a 50-50 chance of becoming a carrier herself.
Okay. That news, I suppose, to yourself, I suppose, the sense of blame and all these type of things that come with it could have happened to you, but it was impossible to know that you were a carrier of these genes.
Unless you go into a doctor and say, run every blood test you can in the world, you're never going to know everything about yourself.
Of course.
So, yeah, had I known, would I have had children? I can most definitely say probably not. Okay. Because I wouldn't want to give this to any child. And like you mentioned about hindsight and everything, sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's not. I'm glad we have them. Don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely delighted we have them. We were very late starters, so we were very lucky to get two. But it's a really hard pill to swallow. The doctor, when he told us that day and explained, that I could be a carrier, he said he had had another family in that week also. And it turned out that the mother was a carrier also, and she was absolutely devastated and blamed herself. And he said to me immediately, he said, please don't feel that you're to blame, because you're not. He said, there's nothing you could have done. Absolutely nothing you could have done differently to stop this from happening.
Okay. Moving on then, since the diagnosis, I'm sure as a family your lives have changed. Yeah. How have they changed, and what's getting you through the days as such?
Good and bad days.
Yeah, but even since that day in Dublin, you come out of there and the world is upside down, like. We drove down from Dublin that day. The two boys were asleep. I can still remember we pulled in on the motorway, and I was saying to you afterwards, imagine if a guard had come across us, he'd probably think, what's wrong with these two? Because we sat there in the Jeep and cried, like. But you have to get on with it, and I think then even over the week after that, now there was brilliant support, family, friends, everybody, work colleagues. But the thing that got me through it too was, or at the start of it was, that there are two beautiful kids. You can't swap them. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't make a difference what they have or what's wrong with them.
You love them the same, and you
love
treat them the same as you would any other child.
And I used to think, even, back at the early stages there, I used to say to you, Bianca, that there's always somebody worse off than you. There's somebody that had it harder that day or
In that hospital.
We were able to bring our 2 boys home with us. They were able to move around, go to bed at night. There's some people that have to possibly take it in shifts to stay awake with a child. So we have what we have, but that's what helped me through it. That some people have it worse, and they're 2 beautiful boys.
Yeah, you can take, I suppose, a lot of positives from that you do have 2 beautiful boys. You've explained there kind of how you 2 guys, how your lives have kind of changed, but do you think, have the boys changed the way they've approached life, or I suppose at their age they don't really understand what's happening just yet? Maybe there hasn't been too many changes to the way they have their daily lives, or are there?
Well, they know they have their medicine in the mornings. They tell me they don't want it, but they've got to have it. But sometimes I wonder, do they know more than we realise? And I'm sure they have felt a shift in things, with people coming and going and doctor's appointments, and they'll tell you, we're not sick, we're not going to the hospital. Sure, I'm not sick and I don't need to go to the doctor, and the doctor doesn't need to see me. And we've had quite a lot of stuff happening even throughout COVID with there's a school age team for Noah, so that's a team of physiotherapist, occupational therapist, speech and language, social worker, can't remember exactly how many, but there's quite a big team in the school age team. And then with Rowan, there's the early intervention team, so when he starts school he'll fall under the same team as Noah, but they both have equal amounts of people on both of those things. So we've had quite a few, I suppose, video appointments with them. They have started to do other appointments now with physiotherapy and stuff, so we have been physical in our appointments also. The occupational therapists have been out for each of the boys. So I suppose they can see, there's a lot of people coming and going, and I wonder, do they wonder why?
And I see with them as well, now that they're getting older and they're interacting more with their cousins and friends and stuff, they'd often say, why can't I run like
I can't run fast like Ushy.
Why can't I run fast like him?
But then he'd also say, how come I can't climb walls? And I said, well, I can't climb walls.
So, in their own little way, I think they are aware of certain
They
things.
know their limits.
They know their limits. But as we look on, we might cry that they can't do something.
But they've known no different.
But they don't cry. He's not standing beside the bicycle crying because I can't cycle it. He's happy to play with something else. So it's our mindset that have to change to their way of life. Okay.
We spoke earlier about supports, and you mentioned medication and the steroids that the boys had to be taking. What other supports are there for the boys? Like, this diagnosis is physical as well as mental. So are there other physical supports there for the boys? Have the boys to do anything, or how can they be helped?
Yeah, so we have daily stretches for the boys, exercises on the legs, which isn't going great for Rowan because he's just full of crack. Like, everything is for a laugh and a joke, and also he'll tell you, we'll do my exercises for my legs, and sure, then he changes his mind and decides to do something else, and he's only 4, so it's very hard to get him to lie and do these things with him. Noah will let you, no problem, and he'd say, give me a back rub, mammy, as well. He loves all that kind of thing, but only coming from me. He's not keen on other people coming in and doing these things, where Rowan actually had a bit of a massage pre-COVID, and he loved it. And he said, do there, do here. He could have stayed there all day. Like, he loves that as well. But he has since received leg splints. So this is Rowan now. Rowan is a little bit more progressed than Noah. so he's a bit weaker. So he has his leg splints for during the day. Now we have to get new shoes for these to fit into. So we're waiting to get in and get sized and all that for the day splints. And then he has resting splints which should be going on at night time when he's asleep. Now he's not keen on them. They are hard to wear, and it's something he's going to have to get used to. So we're just using them kind of an hour or two in the evenings, or as long as he'll allow us to leave them on him. And Noah then will be getting fitted shortly with insoles. That's to keep him sort of from off the toes, because they can be toe walkers. When there's muscle damage, obviously it's more comfortable. You want to see them run around on their toes. I've never seen kids move so fast on tiptoe. So to keep his foot down on the ground, to keep the length in the muscle, they will put in an insole that will sort of be uncomfortable when he goes up on his toes. So it'll keep him more flat on his feet. And for the moment, that's fantastic for Noah because he really doesn't like change. So that's not a bad thing. For out and about, walking any more than 50 yards with the boys is hard. Now we don't do a whole lot of walking. We're rural. Anything it might be is down to the local shop and that's it. But it's pick me up, I'm tired. So they're not light, Okay. They're getting heavy. They're getting harder to carry, and if we're going to be caring for them, we also need to take care of ourselves. So there's a buggy coming very shortly for Rowan for such long walks and stuff like that. It's not for everyday use, but it is a wheelchair. And at 4, you don't expect to be going into a wheelchair. So we'll see how that pans out. Now he did sit in it for fitting and everything, and he seemed fine enough. We refer to it as a buggy because it actually does look more like a buggy than a wheelchair. So I'm going to inquire about a buggy board for the back so that if we are out for a walk and Noah's tired, he can hop up on the back of it, make getting about that little bit easier. Okay.
That has to be tough for you guys and for the boys, to know that that's coming down the line. You mentioned there in your last answer, you were saying about COVID. Has COVID-19 affected the boys' progress in the last few months in the lockdown period, say, or how has that affected the treatment that's been available?
Not hugely, actually, because there's been great contact with, all the different doctors and the school age team and the early intervention team. There's been quite constant contact with them, video calls, and the social workers are fantastic. I nearly consider them my friends now, and I got to meet one of them last week. We had a 2-hour chat last Friday morning when the boys were in school, and I feel like I've known her for a very long time now. She's very supportive, and you would get messages. I had a message from Noah's social worker yesterday to say just checking in on you, see how things are you feeling okay, and is there anything you need? And that's all we've heard from people is what you need. And it's very hard to answer that because you don't actually know what you need. So you take the lead from these people, and I would tell them that. I'd say, you tell me what I might need because we don't know. We're very new to all of this and new to the diagnosis and new to what the disease is, and taking in all the information can be quite hard, and you have a lot of contacts, you have a lot of phone calls. Some of the physical appointments for the hospitals, they're not happening just yet. We're hoping to get up to Dublin to see Dr. O'Rourke again in September. There was mention that we would be going. We're just waiting for the appointment to come. The support of our families has been fantastic. They will do anything they can. They are heartbroken as much as we are. They're there to take over at any given time, day or night. Friends, just the same. Work colleagues, the local community, our neighbours, the committee.
So
far and wide.
It's fair to say there has been a lot of support for you guys from the community, but also from the wider public as well. That has to be a positive, and Sean mentioned it earlier about being positive and that is getting you guys through it. So I suppose to finish up on a positive note with this interview, do you have a message for those people that are offering the support, or is there anything you would like to say?
Thank you. Huge thank you.
Huge thank you to them.
We didn't expect any of this to get quite as big as it has. And I mean by the outpouring from people. It's been enormous. It's been a great cushion to us.
That's excellent. It has to be. It has to be. From everybody that's on the outside looking in, we can only try to imagine what you're going through, but I think that's impossible. Only the people sitting in your position can know what that is.
Well, you read about these things in papers and you think that's really sad, you know, and then you put it down and you get on with your lives like we would have done before. You know, we're all human and we react in different ways, and like that, you don't know about something until you're in it. It is hard to comprehend what other people might be going through.
But to get through your everyday lifestyle, you can't think too far ahead or the end result, because if you do, you'd never get out of bed in the morning. You know, so we'll take it as it comes, stage by stage, because things will progress and it will get worse and it will get harder.
We will have to do everything for them.
Yeah.
Physically.
And, you know, and to watch, you know, 2 kids, whenever, that will have to go into a wheelchair, and there is brilliant support and people in a wheelchair these days, great quality of life, and I'd have no problem with that, but it's the progression after that.
It's what follows.
Things will get weaker and weaker, and more muscle damage and more muscle damage, and then confined to a bed and have to be looked after 24/7. That's the tough one.
That's the hard part.
But you have to do it.
Yeah.
But there is hope.
Yes.
That
there
because they're young,
there will be a cure.
that there will be something.
And
we have that time on our side, thankfully.
That brings me to the fundraising side of the committee that has been set up for you guys. And a question that has come up in the last while is what is the money, or what are the funds going to be needed for? And you've mentioned there that earlier that there are no trials available at this moment in time for the boys, but let's just say, you mentioned there they're young boys, in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years time a trial does become available, or a cure does become available, and it's in America.
Yeah.
You know, what would you like to happen?
Well, that's what the committee said to us. Like, we were very humbled by them when they came to us first, and I suppose we were standing on our own 2 feet and saying, you know, we'll be okay, you know, don't worry about us, we'll be fine, you know, we'll get on with this. And they said, but what if you need money? What if something comes up and it's going to cost hundreds of thousands? Where are you going to get it? And we said, well, we'll find it, we'll get it somewhere, you know. And they said, well, would you not let us help you and gather that and have that there, and then you don't have to think about it because you've enough to think about. So we mulled it over for a couple of weeks and we said, okay, yeah, go ahead.
And it's brilliant to know that, like that, if a trial comes, or a medication in some country,
you just hop on a plane.
you can go.
There was actually a thing this morning on Facebook. I'm reading a lot, and I'm members of a lot of the Duchenne pages kind of globally now at this point. And there was a lady in Western Australia, in Perth, and her son, there is a trial available in the States for him, and per year the cost of the trial drug is $300,000 to $400,000. Like, how can a drug cost that much? But she said, what am I going to do?
As you said.
And that's why, looking back now at, you know, when the committee came to us initially, how would we feel if we didn't have that money? How would we feel if a trial came up and the money wasn't there to go?
Yeah.
Wouldn't we feel very stupid for saying no?
Yeah.
Don't fundraise for us? or for the boys more so.
Yeah, there's an old saying, I suppose, your health is your wealth, and money isn't everything, but
No, it's not.
for these boys, money, it may not be everything, but it is going to be a big help. And down the line further, I don't know, something you may or may not have looked at. You mentioned that the boys, Rowan at 4 years of age has been fitted for a chair, and potentially within a few years the two boys could be facing that scenario. Your family car to get the boys around. It's something that will need to be looked at as well.
It's going
Sean,
to be a van.
Yeah,
Really,
you know, we've
for 2 chairs, it's going to have to be a van.
yeah,
Simple as.
it'll be a van of some sort, and that's it. But there again, you know, things are brilliant now. There's conversions for everything, and you know, we'll sort that.
Yeah.
brilliant.
And we'll have to sort things as they come along, and that's it.
Well, just to finish up, I can say, on behalf of the committee, you two guys show enormous strength. You're a credit to yourselves, to your families, and to the boys. And I'm sure anybody watching this video will feel the same. And I would ask that, you know, on behalf of the committee, anybody that can help to support these boys moving on into the future and what lies ahead for them would do so. And thanks again to Sean and Bianca for this interview and this opportunity to get an insight into what Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy is, and to spread awareness of this horrible disease for these two young boys. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieran.
Thank you, Kieran.